The year was 2847, and humanity had been part of the Galactic Council for only 63 years. In the grand chambers of Nexer Prime, the Council's capital world, humans were still seen as newcomers. Their voices were often ignored. Their opinions were dismissed. The older races looked at them like children who had stumbled. Into a room full of adults, Admiral Lisa Monroe stood on the bridge of the diplomatic cruiser Starbound Valor. Her gray hair was tied back in a tight bun and her uniform was pressed and clean. She had served humanity for 42 years. She had seen wars and peace treaties. She had buried friends and celebrated victories. But today felt different. Today something felt wrong. The ship descended through the amber clouds of Nexer Prime. The planet was beautiful in a strange way. Its sky was the color of rust, and its cities were made of black metal that stretched toward the heavens like fingers reaching for the stars. Standing beside Lisa were 4 other women. These were humanity's finest military minds. General Catherine Walsh commanded the Outer Rim Defense Fleet. She was a tall woman with sharp eyes and a scar running down her left cheek from a battle she never talked about. General Danielle Brooks led strategic operations. She was smaller than the others, but her mind was sharper than any blade. General Samantha Price ran Human Intelligence Services. She knew secrets that could bring down governments. And General Victoria Grant was the youngest 4-star general in human history. She was only 38 years old, but she had already won more battles than most admirals twice her age. These 5 women had been personally requested by the Galactic Council. The message had said it was for a historic peace summit. The Zerathi Collective, an aggressive species that had been attacking human colonies for decades, had agreed to negotiate. It was supposed to be a new beginning. Catherine looked out the window at the alien city below. "I don't like this," she said quietly. Lisa nodded. "Neither do I, but we have to try. If there is even a small chance for peace, we owe it to our people." Danielle pulled up data on her tablet. Security scans showed nothing unusual. "The Council has assured us full diplomatic protection." "The Council's assurances mean nothing," Samantha said. Her voice was cold. She had spent her career learning that words were often lies dressed in fancy clothes. Victoria, the youngest of them, straightened her uniform. "Whatever happens in there, we face it together. We represent humanity. We show them what we are made of." The ship landed on a platform made of smooth black stone. Council guards waited for them. These were Kathrani soldiers, tall insectoid creatures with hard shells and compound eyes that saw everything. They carried weapons that hummed with energy. The 5 generals walked down the ramp with their heads held high. They had no weapons. This was a peace summit, and they had been told to come unarmed as a sign of good faith. Lisa had argued against it, but the council had insisted. They were led through long hallways that seemed to go on forever. The walls were covered with images of the council's history, victories over conquered species, planets brought under their control. Lisa noticed that there were no images of cooperation or friendship, only domination. Finally, they reached the grand hall. It was a massive room with a ceiling so high, it disappeared into shadow. In the center was a round table made of crystal. Around it sat representatives from the 11 other council races. At the head of the table was Arbiter Vexel. He was Kathrani, the same species as the guards. His shell was darker than the others, almost black, and his eyes seemed to hold no emotion at all. He was the most powerful being in the galaxy. His word was law. "Welcome, humans," Vexel said. His voice was like metal scraping against stone. "Please, sit." Lisa and her generals took their seats. The chairs were uncomfortable, clearly not designed for human bodies. Lisa suspected this was intentional. "We are honored to be here," Lisa said. "We hope this summit will bring peace between our people and the Zerathi." Vexel made a sound that might have been laughter. "Peace. Yes, that is why you are here." The doors to the grand hall suddenly closed with a loud boom. Lisa's heart began to beat faster. She looked at Catherine, who had noticed the same thing. Something was very wrong. "Arbiter," Lisa said carefully, "is something the matter?" Vexel stood up slowly. His tall frame cast a long shadow across the crystal table. Humanity has been part of this council for 63 years. In that time you have grown from a small species with a handful of colonies to a power that rivals empires that have existed for thousands of years. "Oh, we have worked hard," Lisa said. "We have contributed to the council. You have become a threat," Vexel interrupted. His voice was louder now. "Your generals win every battle. Your scientists solve problems that have puzzled us for centuries. Your people spread across the galaxy like a disease." Lisa stood up. "We came here in peace. We came here unarmed. If you have concerns about humanity, we can discuss them." "There is nothing to discuss." Vexel raised one of his clawed hands. "The council has voted. Humanity must be controlled, and control begins with removing your leadership." From the shadows at the edges of the room, figures emerged. They were Zerothi, the same species humanity had been told wanted peace. But these were not diplomats. They were assassins. Their bodies were covered in dark armor, and they carried blades that glowed with a sickly green light. Catherine moved first, stepping in front of the younger generals. "Run!" she shouted, but there was nowhere to run. The doors were sealed. The guards had their weapons raised, and the assassins were already moving. Lisa watched as Catherine fought with her bare hands, taking down one assassin before another blade found her back. She watched as Danielle tried to reach the door, only to be cut down before she made it halfway. She watched as Samantha threw herself at Vexel, trying to take him down with her, but the guards pulled her away and ended her life with a single shot. She watched as Victoria, the youngest and brightest of them all, stood her ground and faced death without fear. Then the blade came for Lisa. She felt a moment of cold pain. Then nothing. The 5 greatest military minds humanity had ever produced lay dead on the cold marble floor. Their blood pooled around them, mixing together like a final act of unity. Vexel looked down at the bodies with his emotionless eyes. "Send the message to the human colonies. Tell them their leaders are dead. Tell them to surrender or face extinction." An hour later, the message was broadcast across every human world. It showed the bodies of the 5 generals. It showed Vexel's face as he delivered his ultimatum. It showed the council's seal, proving this was not the act of one species, but of all of them. On Earth, people stopped what they were doing and watched. On Mars, miners put down their tools and gathered around screens. On distant colonies at the edge of human space, families held each other and cried. For one long moment, humanity was silent. The galaxy watched and waited for the humans to surrender. They expected fear. They expected submission. But in that silence, something else was growing. Something the council had never considered. Something they would soon learn to regret. It was rage. Pure, cold, and absolute. And it was about to change the galaxy forever. 3 days after the murders, President Nathan Cole stood in the deepest bunker on Earth. The room was buried 2 miles underground, protected by layers of steel and concrete and energy shields. It was built to survive the end of the world. Now it would be used to start a war. Around him sat the surviving leaders of humanity's military. Admirals in blue uniforms, generals in green, intelligence officers in black. Their faces were hard and their eyes were red from lack of sleep. Many of them had known the 5 murdered women personally. Some had served under them. All of them had respected them. In the center of the room, holographic images of the dead generals floated in the air. Lisa Monroe with her kind eyes and silver hair, Catherine Walsh with her scarred face and warrior stance, Danielle Brooks with her knowing smile, Samantha Price with her sharp gaze, Victoria Grant with her youthful determination. Nathan looked at each face for a long moment before he spoke. 3 days ago, the Galactic Council murdered 5 unarmed women who went to them in peace. They did this because they were afraid of us. They did this because they wanted to break us. He paused and looked around the room at every face. They failed. Admiral Henry Patterson was the oldest person in the room. He was 73 years old and had been fighting for humanity since before most of the people present were born. His hair was white and his face was lined with wrinkles, but his mind was still sharp and his spirit was unbroken. "Mr. President," Henry said, standing slowly, "I served with Lisa Monroe for 20 years. She was the finest officer I ever knew. She believed in peace. She believed that humanity could find its place in the galaxy through diplomacy." His voice grew harder. "But she also taught me something else. She taught me that peace without justice is just another word for slavery. Those women were killed because the Council thinks we are weak. They think that if they cut off our head, the body will fall." He slammed his fist on the table. "I say we show them how wrong they are. I say we make them pay for every drop of human blood they spilled. I say we teach this galaxy that humanity bows to no one." The room erupted in shouts of agreement. Officers who had been quiet with grief now stood with fire in their eyes. The sadness was still there, but it had been joined by something stronger. Purpose. Nathan raised his hand for silence. "Admiral Patterson, what are our options?" Henry activated a holographic map of the galaxy. Blue dots represented human systems. Red dots represented Council space. There was far more red than blue. The Council controls over 400 star systems. We control 37. They have more ships than us, more soldiers, more resources. By every measure that matters, they should crush us icily. "That sounds like bad news," someone muttered. Henry smiled grimly. "It would be if we were planning to fight fair. But we are not going to fight fair. We are going to fight smart." He pointed to various locations on the map as he explained. "The Council is big, but it is also slow. They have been the dominant power in this galaxy for so long that they have forgotten how to adapt. Their fleets follow predictable patterns. Their supply lines are stretched thin. And most importantly, they are not united. Each species in the Council cares more about its own interests than the good of the whole." Commander Gregory Santos sat near the back of the room. He was 45 years old with dark hair and tired eyes. His wife had served under General Brooks. When he heard about the murders, he had held his daughter while she cried for hours. Now he was ready to fight. "What about our people?" Gregory asked. "The civilians on the border colonies. If we go to war, they will be the first targets." Nathan nodded. "We have already begun evacuations. Every civilian on the outer worlds is being moved to safer systems. We will not give the Council hostages to use against us." Another officer asked. "Every shipyard is now working around the clock," Henry answered. "We are converting civilian ships for military use. We are calling back every reserve officer. We are drafting every able body that can hold a weapon. In 30 days, we will have the largest fleet humanity has ever assembled." The planning continued for hours. Strategies were discussed and rejected. Supply lines were organized. Communication networks were secured. Every detail was examined because every detail could mean the difference between victory and extinction finally. As the meeting was ending, Nathan stood one more time. "Before we leave, I want to say something. Not as your president, but as a human being." The room fell silent. What the Council did was evil. There is no other word for it. They murdered innocent women to send a message. They thought that message would make us afraid. They thought we would surrender. He looked at the holographic images of the 5 generals one last time. But they do not understand us. They do not know that when you push humanity, we push back harder. They do not know that our greatest strength is not our ships or our weapons. It is our refusal to give up. It is our ability to come together when everything seems lost. He took a deep breath. "We are about to go to war against the most powerful alliance in galactic history. Some of us will not survive. Some of us will never see our families again. But I promise you this, we will not go quietly. We will not surrender. And when this is over, the galaxy will know that human lives are not cheap. That our people are not bargaining chips. That when you hurt one of us, you hurt all of us." 2 days later, the message was sent. It was broadcast on every frequency, in every language, to every corner of human space. It was short and simple. People of Earth, people of Mars, people of every human colony across the stars, you have seen what the Council did to our leaders. You have heard their demands for our surrender. Now hear our response. We do not surrender. We do not kneel. We do not forgive. From this moment on, humanity is at war with the Galactic Council. Every one of us, soldier or civilian, has a part to play. Stand with us. Fight with us. And together, we will show the galaxy what humanity is truly capable of. Across the human worlds, the response was overwhelming. Volunteers flooded recruitment centers. Factories increased production. Scientists worked without sleep to improve weapons and shields. Even children collected scrap metal for the war effort. On the bridge of his flagship, the carrier Eagle's Fury, Gregory Santos watched as his fleet assembled. Hundreds of ships gathered around him, their hulls painted black for the battles ahead. His first officer approached. "Commander, the fleet is ready. All ships report green across the board." Gregory nodded. In his pocket was a photograph of his wife and daughter. He had promised them he would come home. He intended to keep that promise. "Set course for Nexer Station 7, he ordered. "It is time to show the Council that they made a very big mistake." The engines roared to life. The stars stretched into lines as the fleet jumped to hyperspace. The war had begun. 6 months had passed since the first shot was fired. 6 months of blood and fire and death. 6 months that changed everything the galaxy thought it knew about humanity. The Council had expected an easy victory. They had expected the humans to crumble once the fighting started. After all, they were outnumbered, outgunned, surrounded on all sides by species that had been waging war for thousands of years. Before humans even discovered fire, they were wrong in the halls of Nexer Prime. Arbiter Vexel stared at the reports with growing disbelief. Station 7 had fallen in the first week. The supply depot at Korath had been destroyed a month later. 3 Kathrani battleships had been captured intact by human boarding parties. And just yesterday, a human fleet had appeared from nowhere and wiped out an entire convoy carrying weapons to the front lines. "How is this possible?" Vexel demanded. His clawed hands crushed the data tablet he was holding. His military advisor, Zarathi general named Krath, shifted nervously. "The humans fight differently than any species we have encountered. They do not follow the standard rules of engagement. They attack when they should retreat. They retreat when they should surrender. They use tactics that make no logical sense, then find tactics that counter them." Krath hesitated. "We have tried. Every time we think we understand their strategy, they change it. It is as if they have 1,000 different ways to fight, and they choose a new one for every battle." On the swamp world of Kethros 4, Captain Maria Sullivan proved Krath's words true. Maria was 32 years old, with short brown hair and mud splattered across her face. She had been on this planet for 3 weeks, hunting Kathrani soldiers through endless miles of swamp and jungle. Her unit had started with 200 soldiers. Now they were down to 80, but they had killed over 1,000 Kathrani in return. "Captain, we have located the enemy command center," her sergeant reported. His name was Tony Reeves, and he was built like a tank with a face to match. Maria nodded and pulled up the holographic map on her wrist device. The command center was 5 miles away, hidden in a valley surrounded by ridges. The Kathrani thought they were safe there. They had placed guards on every approach and filled the valley with traps and sensors. "How many defenders?" Maria asked. "Best guess is 300. Maybe more. We have 80 soldiers." Tony grinned. "So we outnumber them by human standards." Maria smiled back. It was a joke they told often. One human was worth 10 of the enemy. Not because humans were stronger or faster. The Kathrani were both of those things. But humans were smarter, more adaptable, and most importantly, they never gave up. "All right, here's the plan," Maria said, gathering her soldiers around her. "The Kathrani have better armor than us, better weapons, better numbers. But they have 3 weaknesses we can use." She pointed to the holographic image of a Kathrani soldier. "First, their joints. Their shells protect most of their body, but the joints where their limbs connect are exposed. Aim for those spots." She pointed to the creature's compound eyes. "Second, Their vision. They can see in almost every direction at once, but they have trouble tracking fast lateral movement. Move side to side, not forward and back. She pointed to the overall shape. Third, their pride. They think we are weak because we do not have natural armor or claws. They underestimate us. Every single time. We're going to use that. The attack came at night when the 3 moons of Kethros 4 were hidden behind clouds. Maria's soldiers moved through the swamp like ghosts, making no sound, leaving no trace. They had learned to move in silence. They had learned to kill in darkness. The swamp had taught them well. The first guards died without ever knowing they were under attack. Silent blades found the joints between their armor. Bodies were pulled into the water before they could raise an alarm. By the time the Kathrani realized what was happening, Maria's forces were already inside the valley. The battle lasted 18 hours. Maria lost 30 more soldiers, brave men and women who died fighting against creatures twice their size. But when the sun rose over the swamp, the human flag flew over the enemy command center. The Kathrani general was still alive. Maria had ordered him taken prisoner. Now he knelt before her, his compound eyes filled with something she had never seen in a Kathrani before. Fear. You cannot win this war, the general said. His voice was weak. The council has resources you cannot imagine. Ships you cannot count. Soldiers you cannot, your council, Maria interrupted, murdered 5 unarmed women who came to them asking for peace. Women who had families. Women who had dedicated their lives to protecting innocent people. She stepped closer to the general. You did not defeat us by killing them. You just made us angry. And there is nothing in this galaxy more dangerous than an angry human. Far above Kethros 4, in the cold emptiness of space, Admiral Henry Patterson commanded the largest human fleet ever assembled. 300 ships flew in perfect formation around his flagship, the dreadnought Unbroken Will. Some of these ships were military vessels built for war. Others were converted freighters, mining ships, even luxury liners that had been stripped down and fitted with weapons. Every ship that could fight was fighting. Admiral, we are approaching Nexer Prime. His navigation officer reported. Henry stood at the center of the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back. He was tired. They all were. 6 months of constant warfare had drained everyone to their limits. But they could not stop now. Not when they were so close. Status of the Council fleet, he asked. 800 ships in defensive formation around the planet. Orbital defense platforms active. Minefield deployed in standard patterns. Oh, standard patterns, Henry repeated with a small smile. They really do not learn, do they? He opened a channel to all ships, all commanders. This is Admiral Patterson. We are about to engage the largest enemy force we have ever faced. The odds are against us. The enemy controls the high ground. They have more ships, more weapons, more everything. He paused. But they do not have what we have. They do not have the memory of 5 women who believed in us. They do not have the anger of 37 worlds that refuse to be slaves. They do not have the spirit of a species that has survived ice ages and plagues and wars and still keeps going. His voice grew stronger. Today we fight for Lisa Monroe, who wanted peace but was given war. For Catherine Walsh, who protected us with her life. For Danielle Brooks, who gave us strategies we still use today. For Samantha Price, who knew our enemies better than they knew themselves. For Victoria Grant, who showed us that courage has no age. He raised his hand. All ships prepare for combat. We end this today. The fleet surged forward toward Nexer Prime. The final battle had begun. The battle for Nexer. The Prime would be remembered for 10,000 years. Songs would be written about it. Children would learn about it in schools. Species that had not even achieved space travel yet would one day hear the story of how humanity brought the mightiest empire in the galaxy to its knees. But for those who were there, it was not a story. It was blood and fire and the screams of the dying. Admiral Patterson's fleet emerged from hyperspace in a burst of light that lit up the darkness, like a second sun. 300 human ships faced 800 council vessels, plus orbital platforms, plus minefields, plus the largest space station in the known galaxy. by any reasonable measure. The humans should have been destroyed in minutes. Enemy fleet moving to intercept, the tactical officer called out. They are forming a standard defensive wall. Patterson studied the holographic display that showed the positions of every ship. The Council fleet was doing exactly what he expected. They were spreading out to form a barrier between his ships and the planet. It was the textbook response to an attack like this, which was exactly why Patterson had planned for it. Signal the fleet, he ordered. Execute Pattern Alpha. All ships engage the enemy directly. Make them commit to the frontal assault. The human fleet surged forward, weapons firing. Missiles streaked through space. Energy beams cut through the darkness. The Council ships returned fire with everything they had. The first human ship exploded within seconds of engagement. Then another. Then another. Patterson watched the casualty report scroll across his screen and forced himself to keep his face calm. Every one of those ships had a crew. Every one of those crews had families waiting for them back home, but he could not think about that now. He had a battle to win. On the other side of the system, hidden in the magnetic field of a massive gas giant, Commander Gregory Santos waited with 100 ships. They had been there for 3 days, running silent, pretending to be debrised. Their engines were cold. Their weapons were powered down. To any sensor, they looked like nothing more than rocks floating in space. Gregory watched the battle unfold on his screen. He saw human ships dying. He wanted to order his fleet forward, to help them, to do something. But he knew the plan. He had helped create the plan, and the plan required patience. Commander, his first officer said quietly, the Council fleet has fully committed to the engagement. Gregory checked the positions one more time. The Council ships had moved forward to meet Patterson's attack. Their formation was stretched thin. And most importantly, they had left the back door open. Signal all ships, Gregory said. Power up weapons. Set course for the orbital platforms. We end this now. 100 human ships burst from the gas giant's magnetic field, like predators emerging from tall grass. Their engines roared to life. Their weapons powered up with a hum that every crew member felt in their bones. The Council forces never saw them coming. Gregory's fleet hit the orbital platforms. Before they could reorient their weapons, the first 3 platforms exploded in balls of orange fire. The fourth tried to raise its shields, but a concentrated barrage from 20 ships punched through before the shields could fully form. All ships target the enemy rear, Gregory ordered. Trap them between us and Admiral Patterson. The Council fleet, which had been so confident moments before, suddenly found itself caught between 2 forces. They tried to turn and face the new threat, but that exposed their backs to Patterson's guns. They tried to split their forces to fight both enemies, but that made them weak against both. Chaos spread through the Council ranks. Ships that had fought together for centuries now crashed into each other in their panic. Communications became confused as commanders screamed contradictory orders. On the bridge of his personal cruiser, Arbiter Vexel watched his empire crumbling. The largest fleet in galactic history was being torn apart by a species that had only discovered faster-than-light travel 300 years ago. Retreat, he ordered. All ships retreat to the planet's surface. But there was nowhere to retreat to. Human Marines were already boarding the orbital stations. Human ships had established a blockade around the planet. And on the surface, human soldiers were landing by the thousands. Maria Sullivan was among the first to touch down on. Nexer Prime, her boots hit the black stone of the landing pad, and she immediately raised her weapon. Around her, her soldiers fanned out, securing the area. Move fast, she ordered. The palace is 3 miles east. We take Vexel alive if possible. Dead if necessary. The march to the palace was brutal. Council forces threw everything they had at the advancing humans. Kathrani shock troops. Zerothi assassins. Species that Maria had never even seen before. All fighting desperately to protect their capital. But nothing could stop the tide of humanity. Maria's lost count of how many enemies she killed. Her weapon grew hot in her hands. Her armor was cracked in 3 places. Blood ran down her face from a cut above her eye. But she kept moving forward. Always forward. The palace gates fell after a 2-hour siege. Maria led her soldiers through the breach, stepping over the bodies of defenders who had chosen death over surrender. The halls of the palace were made of black crystal that reflected everything like dark mirrors. Maria saw herself in those reflections, a blood-soaked warrior who barely looked human anymore. Finally, she reached the throne room. Arbiter Vexel stood there alone. His guards had fled or died. His advisors had abandoned him. The most powerful being in the galaxy was nothing more than a frightened creature waiting for the end. "You have won," Vexel said. His voice was empty. "What will you do now? Destroy us? Take your revenge? Become the monsters you claim we are?" Maria lowered her weapon slightly. "No." Vexel's compound eyes showed confusion. "No, we did not come here to destroy you. We came here for justice. There is a difference." The doors behind Maria opened, and more human soldiers poured in. Among them was a woman with red hair and burns across her face. This was Ambassador Claire Bennett. She had been captured when the war began and held prisoner in this very palace for 6 months. She had been tortured, starved, told every day that humanity had been defeated, but she never broke. She never gave up hope. Now she walked through the throne room with her head held high and stood before the creature who had ordered her suffering. "6 months ago," Claire said, "you killed 5 women who came to you asking for peace. You thought their deaths would break us. You thought we would surrender?" She stepped closer to Vexel. "But you made a mistake. You treated us like we were just another species to be controlled. You did not understand that humanity does not bow. We do not kneel. And we never, ever forget." Outside the palace, the sounds of battle were fading. The council fleet had surrendered. The orbital platforms had been captured. The war was effectively over. Maria holstered her weapon and looked out the window at the alien sky. Somewhere up there, among the stars, 5 women had died for believing in peace. They had not lived to see this day, but their sacrifice had made it possible. "General," one of her soldiers called out. "What are your orders?" Maria turned away from the window. There was still work to be done. Prisoners to secure, wounded to treat, a galaxy to rebuild. "Contact Admiral Patterson," she said. "Tell him the palace is secured. Tell him Vexel is in custody. Tell him," she paused, thinking of 5 faces she had never forgotten. "Tell him we won." 1 year after the fall of Nexer Prime, the galaxy was a different place. The Galactic Council, which had ruled for over 10,000 years, was gone. In its place rose the Interstellar Assembly, a new government where every species, no matter how small or weak, had an equal voice. Humanity had insisted on this. They had not fought a war of liberation just to become the new oppressors, the Kethrani Empire, which had planned the assassination of the 5 generals, was forced to pay reparations to every human colony they had ever raided. Their military was reduced to a fraction of its former size. Their leaders faced trial for war crimes. The Zerathi Collective, whose assassins had carried out the murders, was disbanded entirely. The species was not punished as a whole, for humans believed that the sins of leaders should not be placed upon innocent people. But those who had participated in the killings were hunted down and brought to justice. Arbiter Vexel spent the rest of his days in a prison cell, watching through a small window as the empire he had built crumbled into dust. He would die there alone and forgotten. A reminder to future tyrants of what happens when you underestimate humanity. But for most humans, the war was not about revenge. It was about making sure that what happened to Lisa Monroe and her fellow generals would never happen again. It was about creating a galaxy where peace meant something, where diplomacy was not a trap, where species could work together instead of dominating each other. It was about honoring the dead by building a better future. On a quiet hillside outside the city of New Washington on Earth, a memorial was constructed. 5 statues made of white marble stood in a semicircle, each one showing one of the fallen generals in their dress uniforms. Lisa Monroe stood in the center, her kind face looking out at the visitors who came from across human space to pay their respects. The dedication ceremony took place on the 1-year anniversary of their deaths. President Nathan Cole stood before a crowd of millions. Cameras broadcast his words to every human world. Ships in orbit played the ceremony for their crews. Even on distant colony worlds where the signal arrived days late, people gathered to watch. 1 year ago, Nathan began, his voice steady despite the emotion he felt. 5 women were murdered. They were not killed in battle. They were not killed because they threatened anyone. They were killed because they believed in peace. He paused, looking at each statue in turn. Lisa Monroe was 63 years old. She had served humanity for over 4 decades. She had seen more conflict than most of us can imagine, and yet she never stopped believing that there was a better way. Her last act was walking into that room, unarmed, hoping to end a war before it began. He moved to the next statue. Catherine Walsh was 57. She protected our borders for 20 years. Every colonist on the outer world slept safer because of her. She knew the risks of that summit better than anyone. She went anyway because Lisa asked her to. Because she believed in Lisa, he continued down the line. Danielle Brooks was 49. She was the smartest person I ever met. Her strategies saved millions of lives during the war. Strategies she developed years before, hoping they would never need to be used. She went to that summit because she believed her intelligence could help broker a real peace. Samantha Price was 52. She spent her career learning the secrets of our enemies, not to harm them, but to understand them. She believed that understanding was the first step toward peace. She went to that summit believing she could help bridge the gap between our species. Victoria Grant was only 38. The youngest general in our history. She had her whole life ahead of her. She went to that summit because she wanted to prove that youth was no barrier to making a difference. She was right. Nathan turned to face the crowd. These women were more than generals. They were mothers and daughters and sisters and friends. They had families who loved them. They had dreams that would never be fulfilled. They had so much more to give. His voice grew stronger. Council killed them thinking it would break us. They thought that by cutting off our heads, the body would fall. They did not understand that humanity is not like other species. When you push us down, we get back up. When you break us, we rebuild stronger. When you kill our leaders, we become a species of leaders. He gestured to the statues. These women did not die in vain. Their sacrifice sparked a movement that changed the galaxy. Today, every species in the Interstellar Assembly has the same rights. Today, assassination is considered a crime against all sentient life. Today, peace means something because humanity showed that we would fight to defend it. In the front row of the crowd, Commander Gregory Santos stood with his wife and daughter. His daughter was 12 years old now, old enough to understand what had happened and why her father had been gone for so long. Around her neck, she wore a small medal. It had belonged to Admiral Lisa Monroe. After the war, Monroe's family had given it to Gregory's daughter, saying that Lisa would have wanted a young person to have it. Something to remind her that ordinary people can do extraordinary things. "Dad," she whispered as the ceremony continued, "do you think they are watching?" Gregory looked up at the statues, then beyond them to the blue sky and the stars that were invisible in the daylight, but always there. "I think so," he said softly. "I think they have been watching this whole time, and I think they are proud of us." After the ceremony ended, Admiral Henry Patterson stood alone before the statues. He was 74 now, retired from active duty, but still advising the new Interstellar Assembly on military matters. His hair was completely white and his joints ached with age, but his mind was still sharp. "We did it, Lisa," he said quietly. "We changed the galaxy. Not the way you wanted, maybe. Not through peace. But we changed it." He reached out and touched the base of her statue. "I'm sorry you did not get to see it. I'm sorry you had to be the price we paid. But I promise you this, as long as I live, as long as any human lives, we will never forget what you stood for. We will never stop working toward the dream you believed in." He straightened his old uniform and saluted the statue. "Rest well, Admiral. You earned it." The sun set over New Washington, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Visitors continued to arrive at the memorial. They brought flowers. They brought letters. They brought small gifts that represented what the 5 generals meant to them. A young girl left a toy starship because she wanted to be an admiral like Lisa Monroe. An old veteran left his medals because he had served under Catherine Walsh and wanted her to have something to remember him by. A teacher left a book because Danielle Brooks had once visited her classroom and inspired her students to study strategy. And late at night, when most of the visitors had gone home, a figure approached the statues alone. It was Claire Bennett, the ambassador who had been held prisoner and had witnessed the end of Vexel Empire. She sat down on the grass before the statues and spoke to them like old friends. I never got to tell you this, she said, but I was supposed to be at that summit. I was delayed at the last minute by a scheduling conflict. Some days I feel guilty that I survived and you did not. Some days I wonder why fate chose me to live. She was quiet for a moment. But then I remember what you taught me, that survival is not about luck. It is about purpose. You gave me a purpose that day. You gave all of us a purpose, and we fulfilled it. She stood up and looked at each statue one last time. The galaxy is different now because of you. Better because of you. And it will stay that way because humanity will never forget. Above the memorial, the stars began to appear as darkness fell. Each point of light was a sun, possibly with planets, possibly with life. The galaxy was vast and mysterious and full of dangers. But humanity had proven itself. They had shown that they belonged among the stars. They had earned their place through blood and sacrifice and an unbreakable spirit. And somewhere, in whatever place heroes go when their battles are done, 5 women looked down at what their deaths had created and smiled. The war was over. The future was bright, and humanity was just getting started.